The product sense interview is the round that makes or breaks a PM job at places like Netflix, Meta, and OpenAI. And today we're breaking down exactly how to ace it.
And what's interesting is that most candidates fail, not because they lack product knowledge, but because they don't understand the game they're actually playing.
Say more about that, the game metaphor.
So the article draws on work from two people: Jules Walter, who built Slack's growth product and now leads a team at YouTube, and Ben Erez, who coaches PMs and has helped people land offers at Meta, Stripe, OpenAI, Netflix. Ben's core insight is that the product sense interview isn't a casual conversation. It's a structured game with specific rules, and your job is to make the signals the interviewer needs to collect impossible to miss.
Okay, but before we get into the interview tactics, the article spends real time on what product sense actually is as a skill. Can we start there?
Yeah, and I think it's important because a lot of people treat interview prep as totally separate from actually developing the skill. Jules's definition is the consistent ability to craft products that have the intended impact on users. It lives in the Venn diagram between empathy and creativity.
Empathy to detect the need, creativity to solve it.
Exactly, and the canonical examples he uses are things like the original iPhone, built on the insight that people care about aesthetics, not just functionality, and Gmail, which offered massive storage and real search at a time when every other webmail product treated email as basically disposable.
So these aren't accidents. They're built on a real read of what people actually wanted.
Right. And Jules's most important point is that product sense is learned, not innate. You build it through deliberate practice over months. He has 4 specific practices.
Walk me through them.
First one, observe people actually using products, not research reports. Real sessions where you watch someone's face fall when they hit a confusing screen. Jules recommends 2 to 4 sessions a month on your own product, asking questions like, what do you think this product is for, or what are you thinking right now?
That third one is interesting. What are you thinking right now? That's almost therapy adjacent.
It surfaces emotional friction you'd never catch in analytics. When Jules joined Slack in 2016, they ran sessions like this on mobile onboarding and discovered 3 things pure data couldn't tell them. People didn't understand what Slack was even after seeing the homepage. They froze when they got into the app because of too many competing calls to action, and they refused to share their address book because it held friends, not colleagues.
Those are all pretty different problems with pretty different solutions.
Completely different. And they led to onboarding experiments that significantly lifted retention. You'd never get there from a funnel chart alone.
What's practice 2?
Deconstruct everyday products. Spend an hour or 2 a month trying new apps and tearing them apart. The article uses Venmo versus Cash App as a great example. They look like the same product, but Cash App positions as a banking app and feels premium. Venmo feels social and informal. Cash App has 1 screen to send money, Venmo has 3.
And Venmo apparently has buttons that are the same color and contiguous, so people accidentally tap request when they meant pay.
Which is a real problem if you're splitting a dinner bill. That's the kind of thing that's totally invisible until you go looking for it. Once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it.
Practice 3.
Learn from great product thinkers. Jules says the single biggest accelerant for his own product sense was working at Slack, watching Stuart Butterfield run product reviews. There's a great detail in here. Slack shows a rooster icon when you channel a large team across time zones.
A rooster. To signal, hey, it's the middle of the night for some of these people.
It was never built to move a metric. It exists to prevent the recipient's anxiety, and Stuart used to quote Charles Eames, "The details are not the details, they make the design."
That's a good line. And practice 4?
Stay curious about technology shifts in your domain. New platforms create new product surfaces. Cash App made 76% of its 2020 revenue, something like $4.6 billion, from Bitcoin transactions because they bet on a trend competitors dismissed. Uber needed GPS-equipped smartphones and Google Maps APIs to exist at all.
So the question to ask when you spot a new trend is what?
The article puts it well. If this reaches its full potential, what becomes possible that wasn't? Paul Graham's version is live in the future, then build what's missing.
Okay, so that's the long-term skill. Now let's get into the interview itself because that's the high-stakes part. You mentioned Ben Erez's framework, 5 dimensions, 35 working minutes. What are the 5?
Clear communication, product motivation, segmentation, problem identification, and solution development. And Ben is very clear. Excellence in one cannot rescue weakness in another. You need at least a passing score on all 5.
That's a tough constraint. Let's go through them using the example the article uses. Build a podcast product for Netflix.
Perfect prompt to drill on. Step 1, clear communication, is actually about the first 3 minutes, and it's where most candidates fail. They jump straight into brainstorming instead of establishing structure.
What should you do instead?
3 things. Waypoint: before each section, take a brief thinking pause, then tell the interviewer what you're about to do and check in. Set 2 to 4 assumptions that narrow scope without closing off solution space, and then articulate your game plan out loud before you execute it.
Give me the assumptions for the Netflix podcast question.
The article gives a great template. Something like, I'm the PM for a new 0 to 1 podcast product at Netflix. I'll focus on the US market initially. I'll build within Netflix's existing ecosystem rather than as a standalone app. I'll focus on audio since most podcast usage is audio first. And I'll focus on existing Netflix subscribers rather than new user acquisition.
Those assumptions are doing real work. They're not just throat clearing.
Exactly. And then the game plan. I'll describe the product and why it matters, break down the audience, identify problems, brainstorm solutions, and if we have time, sketch a V1. Then you ask, does this plan sound good? And you give the interviewer a chance to redirect you before you waste 30 minutes going the wrong direction.
That's actually pretty smart. You're essentially getting alignment before you do the work.
And Ben says it's music to the interviewer's ears, because they now know you know how to play the game.
Step 2 is product motivation, the why before the what.
And Ben sees too many candidates rush this. You want 3 to 5 minutes here. For Netflix podcasts, you'd cover what audio consumption looks like today, hundreds of millions of podcast listeners in the US alone, where Netflix has unique advantages, massive user base, content creation expertise, creator relationships, a sophisticated recommendation engine, existing payment relationships.
So the pitch is basically, nobody else has all of those things at once.
Right. And then you end with a mission statement. The article suggests something like, to enrich people's entertainment experience beyond the screen by delivering captivating audio content that can be enjoyed wherever they go. That sentence anchors every later decision.
What are the pitfalls here?
Describing only features instead of purpose. Mission statements that are either too vague, help users be more productive, or so narrow they close off your solution space, and proposing directions that contradict the company's actual strengths.
Okay, step 3, segmentation. This one seems like it could go wrong in a lot of ways.
The biggest mistake candidates make is segmenting by demographics. Don't say millennials in urban areas. Segment by motivation and behavior. For Netflix podcast listeners, the article suggests 3 motivation groupings: education and learning, entertainment and narrative, and community and fandom.
And you start with an ecosystem analysis before you even get to segments.
Right. Identify all stakeholders, not just end users. For Netflix podcasts, that's listeners, creators, advertisers, Netflix internal teams, competing platforms. Then pick one to focus on and justify the choice. For listeners, you'd say, they're the demand side aligning with Netflix's customer-centric approach, largest impact surface.
Then you build a persona from your chosen segment.
And Ben picks what he calls educational content extenders. The persona is Alex, who regularly watches Netflix documentaries about science, technology, and history, researches topics further after watching, and listens to educational podcasts during commutes. Specific, relatable, and it constrains everything that follows.
I like that the persona has a habit and a context, not just a demographic.
That's exactly what makes it useful. Alex listens during commutes immediately tells you something about the product experience. It needs to work with a phone in a pocket, probably with no screen interaction.
Step 4 is problem identification. The article makes a distinction I want to pull out: problems versus needs.
This is one of the most important distinctions in the whole framework. I want recommendations is a need. I struggle to find audio content related to the documentary I just finished because Netflix's recommendations are all video is a problem. The second one has context, emotional impact, and a specific friction point.
And the journey mapping for Alex is not generic pre, during, post.
Right, the article is explicit about this. The candidates who win visualize a day in the life of the specific persona. For Alex, it's discovery, evaluation, consumption, retention, application, continuation. Each stage has specific friction points you can name.
And the priority problem they land on is the learning continuity gap.
Alex finishes a fascinating documentary and has nowhere to go next in audio form. High frequency, high severity, and it sits exactly in the gap between Netflix's video strength and the broader podcast ecosystem. It ties directly back to the mission.
Okay, step 5, solutions. You finally get to design something.
And the rule here is generate at least 3 solutions that are meaningfully different in mechanism, not just variations on one idea. Then use an impact versus effort grid and pick one.
What does Ben pick for the Netflix podcast question?
Documentary audio extensions. For each of Netflix's top 5 to 10 documentaries, produce 3 to 5 30-minute audio episodes featuring the original directors and experts going deeper. The reasoning is elegant. High impact, moderate effort, direct connection between video and audio that nobody else can bill because competitors don't own the underlying documentaries.
That's the defensibility argument. Spotify can't do this.
Exactly. And the V1 is concrete. Ship 5 to 10 doc extension series, available both on established podcast platforms and inside the Netflix app. Discovery happens through in-app promotions and post-viewing recommendations. You just finished this documentary. Here are 3 audio episodes that go deeper.
And you wrap the solution with risks and mitigations.
2 main ones in the article. Risk 1. Audio extensions might not maintain Netflix's quality bar. Mitigation. Involve original documentary teams and codify quality guidelines before launch. Risk 2. Hard to track cross-platform engagement. Mitigation. Custom tracking links plus exclusive bonus content gated by Netflix authentication.
The authentication idea is smart. It actually drives people back into the Netflix ecosystem.
It solves a measurement problem and a retention problem at the same time. That kind of systems thinking is exactly what separates good candidates from exceptional ones.
Let me ask a meta question. Is there a through line that connects all 5 steps for a company like Netflix specifically?
The article is really clear on this. Netflix is fundamentally a recommendations and content company. Your motivation, your segmentation, your solutions, all of it should leverage those 2 strengths. They have rich behavioral data on what subscribers watch, an existing payment relationship, and creator relationships. Pick solutions that wouldn't be possible without those advantages. That coherent strategic narrative is what interviewers are grading.
And presumably, there's also an analytical round where you measure what you just designed.
Ben has a framework for that too. The key move is don't jump to metrics. Start by listing ecosystem players and articulating what value each one gets. Then define metrics a data scientist could implement tomorrow, no vague concepts, and pick a North Star that can grow indefinitely. The article's North Star for Netflix podcasts is total podcast listening hours per week from Netflix subscribers.
And you pair that with guardrails.
Guardrails prevent you from optimizing the North Star in ways that hurt ecosystem health. So you'd track retention of podcast listeners, satisfaction scores, and a guardrail that prevents the recommendation system from cannibalizing video watch time, because that would be a bad trade for Netflix.
Okay, if someone's listening to this and they have a Netflix loop in 3 weeks, what do they actually do this week?
Build your assumption template and make it muscle memory. Pick 5 products you use heavily, including Netflix, and walk yourself through all 5 steps on each. Time yourself ruthlessly. Motivation should be done in 5 minutes, segmentation in 10. Get a practice partner, run mocks, record yourself, rewatch where your structure broke down.
And for Netflix, specifically?
Drill the podcast question, the kids and family question, the live events question, the gaming question, and the international expansion question. All of those have shown up in real Netflix loops according to the article.
Last thing, the article ends with a mindset note that I think is actually important.
Yeah, it's a good one. The interview isn't looking for perfection. Solid scores across 5 dimensions beats one brilliant insight surrounded by chaos. And no one wings these interviews successfully. Deliberate practice is the entire game. Internalize the framework so completely that the structure happens automatically, and you spend your 35 minutes on actual insight instead of stumbling.
Product sense is a learnable skill. The interview is a learnable game, and the difference between candidates who land the job and those who don't is almost entirely about who put in the reps.